Well, hello Bear Scouts. Welcome to the Bear Adventure Baloo the Builder. We've got a table of some tools here, some things that you might find in your toolbox, which is going to be one of the projects that we do in this video for this adventure, Baloo the Builder. All right, so let's take a little closer look at some of these things that we've got on the table. All right, some of the tools that are listed in your handbook that you might have in your toolbox would be something like a drill. Now, this is certainly an older type of drill. This is a hand drill. It's known as a brace and a bit. This is the brace and this is the bit. And you can see it's a little bit of an auger type bit. But this is what people would use to drill holes with before we had electric drills, and they're still used some today. Now this little drill here is also a hand drill, and it can drill a hole also. And again, we just get us a bit here out of our bit box. And the bit would go in right here, and we'll tighten that up, and then we could drill a hole in our piece of wood just like that. Okay, so that's a hand drill as well. Now there's all kinds of bits that you can get. These are some standard bits that you would use to drill varying size holes, and so you've got different size bits for that. If you want to drill a real big hole, well, you might get something like this. This is a large auger bit, and it will drill a large opening in a piece of wood. So those are the drills. Now we've got a couple of hammers laying here. This is what we usually see as a hammer. We use this to drive nails in, and of course the bigger the nail, a lot of times the bigger the hammer you need, which is why if we're doing small work, say putting the wheels on your Pinewood Derby car, or we're driving some small tacks into some material, well, we might want a small hammer like this to do that type of work. Screwdrivers come in all kinds of sizes and configurations. Now there are two primary types of screwdrivers. One is called the Phillips. The Phillips screwdriver has like 4 points on the end of the screwdriver blade, and then we have what's called a slotted or a standard screwdriver, and it has just a flat bit on the end of the blade. Then you've got some fancy ones like this one, and you might have one of these in your toolbox because this is one where it's actually 4 screwdrivers in one. It has a handle and a couple of different size screwdrivers with a standard and a Phillips end, so that you can kind of pick the end you want to do the job that you're looking to do. Okay, and they just slide back into the handle, and your screwdriver is ready to go. Okay. Now we've got a couple of different types of saws here. This is a regular saw that you would use to, a regular hand saw that you would use to cut wood with. And this will not only cut wood with the grain, but this will cut wood across the grain. Another type of wooden saw for sawing wood is this saw. This is a coping saw. Now, You wouldn't use this if you were cutting anything very big, but if you were looking to do fine sawing work, you would probably use a coping saw for that. You can actually cut circles with a coping saw, and this area, the area here between the frame and the blade, actually allow you to get some of the material that you're cutting that you might want to keep, to allow that to move in that area as you saw your pattern, your fine detailed work. I have another little saw here. This is a saw that you would use. This is called a hacksaw. You would use this to saw metal. So if you were looking to, say, cut off a nail that has gone a little farther through the wood maybe than you wanted it to, or you had a piece of metal piping like copper tubing that you wanted to cut, well, you could use the hacksaw to cut that material with. Over here we have some measuring devices, and we have a couple of different squares. This is a square because it allows us to produce a 90-degree angle when we put that down on our item that we're cutting. And see, I can put that down on the edge of the table using the edge of the table on this side for my long piece, and then I could actually mark my 90-degree angle using this end of the square. There's also measurements along the edge of that, so you can use a square to also measure with. This is a handy little square. I like this. I use this quite a bit. Again, it has the measurements along the side here, and you use this very much like you do the larger square, where you can just take that and shove that against the edge of the item that you want to mark, and then draw your line, and you have a 90-degree square that way. Okay, so the nice thing about this one is it's adjustable. It has a little thumb screw right here that you can loosen and slide that measurement, slide the ruler part up on the handle, and you can set that exactly at whatever length you want, so that when you put that down on your material, if you were looking to measure something, say 6.5 inches, then you could set this at 6.5 inches on the ruler, put that down, and then there would be your 6.5 inch mark right at the end of that ruler. So these are squares. This is a very special square. This is a framing square, and again, it has measurements along one edge, but it's also good for not just creating a 90-degree square, but you'll notice that when we put this on the edge of the table, we actually have an angle that we can use, and then depending on how much of an angle we want, there are some numbers here that we can use to adjust that angle, and use that for doing different types of angles. Okay, now we're going to set these over here out of the way as we look at a couple of other measuring tools. These are tape measures, and as you can see, they come in different sizes. This is a 25-foot one. This is a 12-foot one. But again, they just are tape measures, and they have numbers along the metal tape that's in here. The nice thing about these is you can kind of go out here and hook the end of that on something, and it'll kind of hold itself while you measure it. So if you're measuring something really long, that end can kind of help hold that on while you do your measuring. It also has a lock on it, so that you can lock that tape out at a certain distance if you're wanting to cut multiple pieces at that length. The smaller one is the same type of thing. Numbers along the tape, has a lock on it so that you can lock that out at a certain distance, and again, it's just used for measuring something that would be smaller, and it's a little easier to handle. Both of them have these little clips on the back so you can hook them on your belt, so you can keep them handy. Then of course there's always just a straight ruler, okay, and this happens to be a metal ruler, but if you're just doing some small work like we're going to be doing in our projects here for Baloo the Builder, just a simple ruler might be all we need to measure to cut the material that we need. If we're cutting wood, we're probably going to have some rough edges, and so we have some sandpaper here, and we've got some examples of a couple of different types of sandpaper. We have a very fine sandpaper here, a medium textured sandpaper here, and a coarse sandpaper here. Sandpaper has numbers on the back, and the higher the number, the finer the sandpaper is. So if you have a sandpaper that has a small number on it, like this is a 60, so this one's going to be pretty coarse, and this one you see has 120 on it, so that's going to be a much finer sandpaper. This is the type of sandpaper that you might do for finishing type work, but if you had a lot of splinters or a lot of rough spots where you cut your wood, you probably want to use the coarse paper to take that down first, and then maybe use a medium grit and then a finer grit on that to get that down to the finished level that you want. So you might have some sandpaper there in your toolbox. Then your handbook talks about vices or clamps, and I don't have a vise. My particular vise is attached to my work table, and I don't have my work table here, but we do have some clamps, a couple of different types of clamps. This is a real popular type of clamp that's used today. You can ratchet that handle, and you'll see that'll close the gap here and allow that to catch your material. If you wanted to secure material onto a table like this so it doesn't move. These are some spring clamps, and they come in a couple of different sizes, so that if you're wanting to glue or hold something together, you can open that clamp, put that material in there, and then that clamp will clamp right onto it and hold that together, so that if you're gluing material, you might want to use a clamp on it to give the glue a chance to set before you work any further with the piece that you're working on. All right, so these are some of the common tools that you might find in your toolbox.